Jessica Taylor wiped the sweat from her brow as the Arizona sun beat down on her small garage, her hands black with oil as she tuned the old truck's engine. She was used to the heat, used to the stillness of her days, the comforting hum of engines, the clink of tools against metal, the smell of gasoline and dust filling her lungs. But today was different. Today, the silence was broken by the screech of tires on gravel as a black SUV pulled up. Two men in dark suits stepping out, their eyes hidden behind dark glasses, their faces unreadable in the glare of the sun. Jessica felt the tension immediately, the way the air seemed to thicken, the way her pulse quickened as the taller man stepped forward. "Jessica Taylor?" he asked, his voice flat, controlled, carrying the weight of authority that made her straighten up, wiping her hands on a rag as she nodded. "That's me," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady, though her heart was racing. The man exchanged a look with his partner before opening the trunk of the SUV, revealing a heavy metal case, wires coiling out of it, lights blinking softly like a heartbeat in the shadows. Jessica stepped closer, curiosity and caution warring inside her as she studied the device. "What is this?" she asked, her voice low, cautious. The shorter man stepped forward, his expression serious, his voice even lower. "This isn't a normal job, Jessica. If you don't help us, people will die." The words hit her like a blow, her mind racing as she looked at the case, the blinking lights, the wires. Memories flashed through her mind of her time overseas, of the nights spent fixing engines under the threat of gunfire, of the weight of responsibility, the knowledge that her hands could mean the difference between life and death. She took a deep breath, steadying herself as she met the man's eyes. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, her voice firm, her fear pushed aside by the resolve that had carried her through every storm she had faced. The man nodded, pulling out a folder stamped with a federal seal, handing it to her with a grim expression. Inside were photos of families, children, places she recognized from around town, the weight of their lives pressing down on her as she flipped through the images. "We need your help to stop this," the man said, his voice heavy with the unspoken truth of the danger that loomed over them. Jessica looked at the photos, at the faces of the people who would be affected, the lives that would be shattered if she failed. She took another deep breath, closing the folder as she looked back at the men. "I'll help," she said, her voice steady, her decision made. The taller man closed the trunk, the soft click of the latch loud in the stillness, as the heat of the sun pressed down on them. "We don't have much time," he said, his voice calm, but Jessica could hear the urgency beneath the surface. As they carried the device into her workshop, Jessica's mind raced with questions, with fears, with the weight of what she was taking on, but she pushed them aside, focusing on the task at hand, on the lives that depended on her, on the promise she had made to herself to never walk away when she could help. The countdown had begun. The air in the workshop felt heavy as Jessica prepared her tools, checking the wires, the lights on the device blinking faster, almost like a warning. She wiped her hands, her breath steady, her mind focused as she remembered the children in the photos, the lives she promised herself she would protect. The countdown had truly begun, and there was no turning back now. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of rain on hot pavement, a reminder that storms could come at any moment without warning, and Jessica had faced many storms in her life. She had learned to survive, to adapt, to keep moving even when everything around her seemed to fall apart. She tightened her grip on the wrench, feeling the weight of it, the familiarity of it, drawing strength from the knowledge that she had faced challenges before and emerged stronger each time. The men stood by, watching her, their expressions unreadable, but Jessica could feel their anxiety, their fear hidden beneath layers of training and control. She didn't need to see their fear to know it was there. She could feel it in the way they stood, in the way their eyes darted to the device every few seconds. They were counting on her, and she would not let them down. The hum of the workshop filled her ears, the sound of machines working, of tools clinking against metal, grounding her as she took a deep breath and began her work, knowing that every second mattered, that every move she made could be the difference between life and death. The storm was coming, and Jessica Taylor was ready. Jessica took a slow breath, the weight of the promise she had made to herself pressing against the heaviness in the workshop air. The device on her workbench pulsed with a steady, ominous glow, the soft hum of the workshop machines a reminder that time was slipping away. The men watched her, their faces tense, but she pushed the pressure away and focused on the delicate wires in front of her, her hands steady despite the storm swirling in her mind. As she carefully began dismantling the outer casing, memories of late nights overseas, fixing engines under fire, flashed through her mind, reminding her why she was here, why she could not fail. Every wire she clipped, every panel she unscrewed, revealed more complexity within the device, layers upon layers of circuits and encrypted triggers that seemed impossible to untangle. She could hear the men whispering behind her, their words hushed but heavy with fear and urgency. But Jessica kept her focus, each breath measured, her mind mapping the system in front of her. Hours passed, the sun outside dipping lower, casting long shadows across the floor, but Jessica did not stop, her determination pushing her through the fatigue in her muscles and the burn in her eyes. She identified the fail-safe mechanism hidden deep within the device, understanding now that one wrong move could trigger a silent disaster, but she forced herself to breathe, to steady her hands as she disconnected the final link. The room was silent, the device no longer blinking, the tension breaking as the men exhaled, relief washing over their faces. But Jessica knew this was only the beginning. As she wiped the sweat and oil from her hands, she turned to face them, her eyes clear. "What's next?" she asked, her voice calm, ready for whatever was to come. The storm outside had arrived, rain hammering against the workshop windows, thunder echoing in the distance as lightning illuminated the determined set of Jessica's jaw. The fight was far from over, and Jessica Taylor was prepared to see it through, no matter the cost. She moved to her work table, checking the maps and plans the men had brought, reviewing blueprints of a facility she had never seen before but would soon need to enter. The men explained that the device was part of a much larger network, a system that could be triggered remotely if they failed to act. Jessica listened, her mind absorbing every detail, her hands still trembling from the adrenaline, but her mind clear and focused. She asked questions, demanded clarity, refusing to walk into the next stage unprepared. They discussed codes, access panels, emergency protocols. Jessica scribbled notes in the margins of the schematics, her mind piecing together a plan while the storm raged outside. She felt the fear, but it was the kind that sharpened her focus, the kind that reminded her of what was at stake. When they finished the briefing, Jessica stood in the workshop, rain pounding against the windows, the scent of wet earth mixing with the oil and metal in the air. She took one last look at the device she had disarmed, a reminder of the danger they faced, and then she nodded to the men. It was time to move. She gathered her tools, carefully selecting the ones she might need for the mission ahead, placing them in a weathered canvas bag that had seen many long nights and emergencies. She checked the batteries on her flashlight, loaded a small kit of wires, clips, and instruments, each tool laid out and tested before she placed it in the bag. The men watched her, their eyes showing a mixture of fear and trust, knowing that the next steps depended on her skills and her courage. Jessica zipped the bag shut, slung it over her shoulder, and met their gaze with steady eyes. She was ready for what was to come, and she would not fail them. Jessica took one last look around the workshop, letting the hum of machines ground her before she stepped into the unknown. She reached for a weathered leather notebook, flipping through its pages filled with calculations, sketches, and reminders from past missions. The storm outside intensified, lightning flashes illuminating her determined eyes as thunder rattled the glass. She reviewed the plan again with the men, her finger tracing the blueprint lines, marking alternative routes, entry points, and fallback positions. The scent of rain mixed with the lingering oil in the workshop, the air thick with tension and purpose. She rechecked her tools, ensuring each was in place, testing the weight of her gear to confirm nothing would slow her down. Jessica stepped out into the storm, rain soaking her hair as thunder rolled above, the air sharp and alive with electricity. She moved with purpose, every step taking her closer to the dark SUV waiting at the edge of the lot, where the men stood watching her with tense anticipation. As she climbed into the vehicle, the door slammed shut against the howling wind, and the engine rumbled to life. The drive was silent but heavy, the rain tapping on the windows as streetlights flickered by, each flash revealing the focused determination on Jessica's face. They arrived at a secure facility, its gates opening with a creak that echoed in the wet night, and Jessica stepped out, her boots splashing in puddles as she surveyed the perimeter. She pulled out her notebook, reviewing every note and sketch she had made, her mind replaying every instruction, every warning, every potential risk they had discussed. With the men following closely, she moved through the facility's corridors, the lights dim, the smell of damp concrete mixing with the metallic scent of the tools in her bag. They reached the control room, its heavy door creaking open as Jessica stepped inside, the blinking lights of monitors casting an eerie glow on her determined expression. She set down her tools, her hands moving with practiced precision as she began her work, wires and circuits exposed under the harsh light, each connection critical, each adjustment a step closer to completing the mission. The men stood guard, their eyes scanning the shadows as Jessica worked, the sound of her tools clicking and the storm's rumble creating a rhythm that filled the tense silence. Minutes turned into what felt like hours as she traced wires, cut and reconnected circuits, each movement deliberate, her breath steady despite the pressure pressing against her like the weight of the storm outside. Her mind flashed to memories of her childhood, her father teaching her how to fix engines, reminding her to trust her hands. She felt his presence with her, steadying her as she worked. Suddenly alarms echoed in the hallway, red lights flashing as Jessica continued without hesitation, her focus sharpening under pressure. The men moved to the door, weapons drawn, as footsteps echoed in the corridor, but Jessica remained on task, her hands moving with precise urgency. She found the final wire, the one connected to the failsafe, her breath catching as she cut it cleanly, the device lights shifting from red to green, a signal that the threat had been neutralized. Jessica leaned back, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, the men exchanging relieved glances as the tension in the room broke. But before they could relax, a loud crash echoed down the hall and the door burst open. Armed figures stormed in, demanding surrender. But Jessica reached for her bag, pulling out a small device and pressing it against the panel. Smoke filled the room, alarms blaring louder as the chaos erupted, but Jessica moved with calm certainty, guiding the men through the emergency exit she had planned, each step calculated. They emerged into the rain, sirens echoing as the facility locked down behind them. Jessica looked back once before stepping into the darkness, the storm washing over her, ready for what came next. She felt the rain on her skin, the storm mixing with her breath as she guided the team down the narrow service tunnels beneath the facility, every step a reminder of the mission that was not yet over. They reached an underground transport, climbing in silently, eyes glancing at Jessica for the next move. And she closed her eyes, reviewing every detail of the plan, knowing this was only the beginning of a larger storm that was coming for them all. Jessica stepped into the storm, rain mixing with sweat on her face as she led the team into the dark tunnels beneath the facility. The ground shook with distant alarms, echoing like a drumbeat of war. Her boots splashed through puddles, each step pushing her closer to the mission's edge, the weight of her gear a constant reminder of what was at stake. She pulled out her flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness, illuminating pipes, wires, and concrete walls stained with years of neglect. The team moved in silence, weapons ready, eyes scanning every shadow, trusting Jessica to guide them through the maze. Her mind raced, recalling every map, every route, every contingency they had planned. A loud crash above sent dust raining down, and Jessica signaled for the team to stop, listening to the hum of generators and the faint voices of guards searching above. She led them deeper, turning corners, descending rusted staircases, each moment dragging out with tension. The air grew thicker, the smell of oil and damp earth filling their lungs. Jessica's mind flashed to memories of fixing engines with her father, his voice reminding her to stay calm under pressure. They reached a service room, Jessica kneeling to open a panel, wires spilling out as she worked with swift precision, bypassing security locks, disabling alarms, her hands steady despite the chaos around them. Lights flickered, and the ground shook again, the mission window shrinking. Jessica's breath was calm as she finished the bypass, the door unlocking with a soft click. They moved into a larger chamber, the core of the facility, where the real danger waited. The room was filled with humming machinery, screens flashing warnings in red, the air hot and electric. Jessica approached the central console, pulling out her tools, working to disable the core system while the team formed a protective circle. Suddenly, shouting echoed, and armed guards stormed in, gunfire erupting as the team returned fire, the sound deafening in the confined space. Jessica kept working, wires sparking, sweat dripping into her eyes as she focused, the chaos fading into the background. An explosion rocked the chamber, alarms blaring. But Jessica's hands moved faster, finding the final connection, cutting the wire, and the system shut down with a deep, echoing silence. The guards hesitated, the red light shifting to green, and the team pushed forward, securing the area. Jessica stood, her breath heavy, looking around at the flashing green lights, the signal of their success. She wiped her face, looking at the team, their eyes reflecting relief and respect. The mission was not over, but they had won this battle. As they prepared to exfil, Jessica felt the weight lift, replaced by the determination to face whatever came next, the storm outside now a whisper compared to the storm they had just survived inside.